I am the brand ambassador manager at Kaplan. So I work with senior brand ambassadors at UCLA and other different UC schools as well. And I also work with senior organizations, career centers, advisors like Christina to make sure that we're going to share some MCAT resources with you, share some information regarding MCAT prep, any information regarding med school admission timeline. So any way that we can help you, we are here to answer your questions regarding the summer prep or anything that you would like to ask us. I also have my colleague here, who's one of our best MCAT instructor and tutor, Nick. So I'm gonna let him introduce himself, and we're gonna go and get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aram. I wouldn't say I'm one of the best, but thank you. Very kind words.
Well, I think you're one of the best.
Thank you. Awesome. So team, help me out first too. Can you give me some kind of sign of life, an emoji, a react, something down in the chat so I know that we're coming through loud and clear and folks are here tonight? Love it. Seeing those thumbs ups and those parties things coming up. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. It's so nice to see each and every single one of you. My name's Nick, and I was this close to being a Bruin a long time ago. I ended up accidentally going to Berkeley instead. I think that's one of the regrets that I may have carrying with me for the rest of my life, because I always go back to the campus every time I'm in SoCal, and I'm like, yeah, I missed out. But I get to live vicariously through you. A little bit about me. I've been an instructor with Kaplan for almost 9 years now. I actually started with Kaplan as a student doing SAT and ACT stuff. Went to college, realized that I was broke and needed some extra cash, and went back and started to teach for them too. And now I kind of wear a lot of hats here at Kaplan, from teaching, writing content, designing courses, and training our faculty in the next set of tutors. Like, I've seen the whole gamut, and I've stuck with Kaplan for so long because I realized that it's really great to figure out where you're having a lot of trouble and how to learn, well, what are my next steps and where do I go from there? Now, a little bit about my background outside of this. So Kaplan is something that I've stuck with for the last 8 years, but my day job has always been in patient advocacy and patient experience. I run a few different companies. And right after I went to grad school at Harvard to get my MPH, I realized that teaching was the part of my life that I missed the most, which is why I get to be here tonight with folks like you all. Okay. So let's go ahead and dive into the first one. Iram, you want to take this slide from me real quick?
Yeah. Yes. So let me talk about a little bit benefits that all attendees here in Zoom room will get. So of course, MCAT course discount. If you want to go with one of our MCAT courses, you're going to get 15% off. If you want to talk to one of our Kaplan experts regarding the courses, building your personalized study plan, because every student is different, we also offer free consultation. So I'm gonna put the link in the chat for easy click and go. I'm gonna also show the QR code at the end, so you can easily book some time with one of our MCAT experts. It's totally free, and you can use as many times as you can and get some information. Just process it a little bit, share it with your parents or friends, and then email the person that you just talked. So they have all the promo codes and they know the information. So they will be there to help you, to give you any information about our MCAT prep options and study guide. We also have free MCAT resources like study guide. So if you have your phone with you, you can scan the QR code on this slide. You're going to see a short form. We're asking your information, like first name, last name, email, test type that you're interested in taking. And you're going to receive a study guide to your inbox. So at least you can start from somewhere and get some one of our great resources to get started for your MCAT prep. Alrighty. I think I'm all set with the slide. Stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Iram. Awesome. Awesome. So then let's go ahead and dive in. Of course, it wouldn't be one of a lecture stuff without an agenda, but to spice things up, team, I really need your help, okay? It's going to be super boring if it's just me talking at you. So please leverage that chat, use that Q&A, use the emotes, and really let us know what's on your mind. Feel free to pause or ask questions at any point along the way, because, honestly, it's better to have your questions answered as we go rather than wait until the end and forget what's going on. But brief thoughts on what we're going to do. We're going to talk through what the MCAT is, right? We're going to talk to you about figure out how much time you're going to need to study, and then dig into the different resources and some of the stuff that we've designed so that you know what should be my next step. And to help me out and really gear what we're talking about here, can you all type into the chat for me, what like year are you in college? Are we talking freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors? I'm pro my gap year, folks. I'm on gap year number 8 right now. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Charmaine. And then freshmen, awesome. Love it, love it. Juniors in the room, Kathleen. And then library bottler 8251. By the way, if you all want to switch your names, and do us a huge favor too, switch your chat from host and panelists to everyone. Use this time and space to learn together, right? We're not all here by ourselves, but thank you. Love it. Awesome. Okay, so we got a good mix of a lot of juniors, a lot of seniors. Those of you who are juniors, it seems like you're ready to apply straight. And my freshman and sophomore, thank you for being here early. You're going to be right on top of it, folks. Love it. Okay, so then let's dive in first and talk about what's on the MCAT. Team, let me know in the chat real quick, like, what do you know about the MCAT? Spit out anything, everything, whatever you can think of. What do you know about it? And if that means nothing and you're completely unsure, it's okay to put a bunch of question marks in there too. This exam is a scary exam with all the ads going on YouTube and stuff too. Yeah, miles wide and inches deep. I love it, Charmaine. Thank you, Christina. Yeah, long and hard. Oh my gosh, this is like one of the few. So I've taken and taught every single standardized test out there. And like the MCAT is the most exhausting. It's the only one that's like 8.5 hours, 7.5 hours to like just sitting there, but then 8.5 when you add in the admin and trying to get there early and then parking and then checking out and all that. It is like a whole day kind of event. Right? Any other thoughts, things that you can think of? I mean, of course, there's the sciences, right? Yeah, can I get a duh in the chat if you're like, yeah, the sciences, I got to know a lot. And how many of you feel like you are stressed because you have to read a whole textbook or hundreds of books and know every single little nitty gritty detail and piece of science that you've been learning for the last 4, 6, 7, 8 years if you've been starting since high school? Anybody feel stressed about that? Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm seeing the emotes come in. Yeah, I feel you. It stressed me out for the longest time thinking I needed to do that. But team, would it make you feel better if I told you, if you know like the foundations, the stuff that you had from like high school level sciences and are really good at seeing the hints that they give you in the passage, more than half the exam you can answer without knowing a ton of extra content? Anybody? Like I literally spent the last 2 years going through every single question released by AMC and trying to make sure and check, wow, can we actually figure out these answers without knowing a ton of extra super convoluted science? And that's the beautiful thing. Yeah, you can, right? So brief overview of what's going to look like on test day. 7.5 hours, add to the bookends of that, a little bit earlier, a little bit after to get there to make sure you're checking in and standing in line. And as you're leaving, sometimes if you don't finish early, there's a whole line of people who are leaving too. And you've got to sit there raising your hand in the room and waiting until everybody's done. It happens, right? It's a long day. It's a long test. But the idea is you're going to do about 59 to 53 questions, 53 for cars, 59 for all the sciences, and you got a little bit more than an hour and a half to do each section with some breaks in between, okay? Now, science content. Team, help me out in the chat. What topics in science do you hate most? Like OChem has always been up there for a lot of folks. Every time I teach this session, even back in the day when I was young, physics too, right? Yeah, sure. I feel you. Physics. Oh my, it took me 6 years to finally feel confident enough to understand physics for the MCAT, right? We don't have 6 years, but you know, like, oh man, if you were in a course with me, I'd love to show you. We don't gatekeep. I'd love to show you all the basic things that people make so convoluted and so difficult. But here's the beautiful, beautiful part, right? Charmaine, I like that. You like physics, but it didn't come back. It doesn't like you back. I feel you. Here's the beautiful thing about it all, though, right? When we look at the amount of physics and even OChem on the exam, you see a good hodgepodge of all of it between all the science sections. But team, can I get some wows, some gas, some exclamation points? There's not that much physics compared to the whole exam, right? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's what I find so amazing about this. Okay. Don't feel like you have to be an expert or have to make straight A's in all of your classes in undergrad in order to do well in this exam, or have to go back and relearn everything from your intro physics and intro chem classes. You don't. You just have to get really good at knowing what is it that I don't know, and how do I learn that information quickly so that I can use it for the MCAT? Because it's not about regurgitating facts. If you took the MCAT pre-2015, yeah, you could get away with doing that, right? To give you an idea, that's how like old I am, right? But like if you're taking it after 2015, no, it's all passage based, and a lot of it, if you can see the hints in the passage, you know exactly how to find the answer. Okay. So that being said, how many of you get stressed about cars? Can we get some reacts, some emotes? Can I get a sense in the room? Cars was never my jam. I didn't learn English as my first language. I actually learned French professionally first, which made it really difficult for me to understand how to pay attention and do reading comp my entire life. And I got so stressed out about it whenever I was doing the MCAT, right? But the thing is, it breaks it up into three very straightforward sections, quote unquote straightforward. You got your comprehension questions. These are, hey, can you find that information in the passage and regurgitate it? You get a good third of the questions coming from that. The other third is from reasoning within the text, right? And I'm rounding a bit here, but reasoning within the text is, can you find that piece of evidence and take it one small step forward, right? And then the last set is reasoning beyond, where they're going to give you outside information in the question stem. And you've got to ask yourself, okay, well, this is outside information. What did I read in the passage that this outside information relates to? And there's always going to be a clue or a hint in the question stem that's going to tell you where to look in the passage. But that's the thing about cars. It is an open book test. Can everybody type into the chat for me? Open book test. Like, people think they have to come in and be expert at cars. People think they have to come in and be able to read 700-800 words per minute. You don't. There's no point in reading fast if you can't get the questions right. And the way you get the questions right is you focus on specifically what is it that is in the passage that you can point to and prove your answer. So there's two rules with cars that I'll give you a sneak preview on. One, point to the part of the passage that proves your answer. Two, all it takes is one word to make a good sounding answer trash. Okay, so those of you who are in between 50-50s, whenever you're doing like school stuff and exams and things like that, go back and figure out what is that one word that makes it wrong. Because even if you're 1% wrong, you're still wrong. Okay, so that being said, how much time should I spend on the MCAT? Can you help me out, team? Like, what is your best guess? How much time have you heard friends, family, people tell you to study? Especially when we're getting into the summertime, right? Ooh, 300 hours. Yeah, that's a good number. Solid guess. Have you been to this workshop before? 3 months, 2 years? Yeah, love it. 6 months for the best results. Okay. Yeah, and see, that's the thing. There isn't a set number. There is a take a diagnostic test and then plan your schedule kind of approach, right? Because these numbers that you all are bringing up, so on the actual AMC, the thing that they found was that if you spend about 20 hours a week for 3 months, right, that's going to get you your goal score, or that's what students have reported have gotten them their goal score, right? So that's about 240 hours. Kaplan sets up the entire course to be 300 hours, a little bit more than that when you consider all the videos and the modules, because a lot of people just don't study for the test, and some want to be way above the average, which brings up the point of it depends on what score you want. If you take a diagnostic test and you're already at a 505 and you're like, I just need a 512, right? Beautiful, 7 points. How are you going to map out your time so that you're going to get those 7 points? Whereas if you start closer to a 480 or 490, you can still totally jump up to that 515, 520 range, but it might take you a little bit more time unless you figure out, okay, I need to take X, Y, and Z classes again. I need to spend a lot of time learning this piece of content now, and that's going to totally switch the gears and get you on top of everything. Like, team, if you haven't been studying your amino acids yet, my freshmen, my sophomores, my juniors, like, just start now. Start learning the 3-letter codes, the 1-letter codes, be able to draw them from memory. It will help you in your biochem classes at UCLA. But more importantly, it's like a huge foundational piece of the MCAT that constantly shows up over and over and over again. Okay. So, and thank you so much, Christina, for popping that into the chat. Now, team, here's the thing, right? Cool. Hours are daunting. Time is daunting. And we have to be realistic with ourselves. Like, you have lives, you have family, you have friends, you want to go see that movie. I still regret today not taking the time to go to a Pentatonics concert when I was a junior in college. That will forever be one of my regrets, because it was only $20 and it was before they blew up in time, right? And I spent it, guess what? Studying. And you know what? At the end of the day, if you structure your calendar and you plan out exactly when you're going to study, there is time and there is room for you to go to those concerts and to have fun and go out with friends and to eat that food and travel across the world. You can do it all. You just have to be very methodical about where you spend your time. Okay. So that brings us to figuring out what is my calculator for how much time I should study, right? Well, if you think about this in reverse and you're thinking, okay, I only got 12 weeks. Okay, that's about the 3 months you have in the summer. And you're like, I'm going to get this done by the summer. So I'll take it right in September, the last test date, and then I won't have to think about it forever. And you're like, my goal is 12 weeks. Wonderful. We take the amount of time that you have, so about 300 hours, you divide it, and it's going to be about 25 hours per week, right? Now, remember, 25 hours per week, treating this like a part-time job is just something that we recommend and that data has shown works for a lot of students. It doesn't mean that you have to spend the whole 25 hours. If you get really good at a topic, or you're really strong in like OChem or physics and kinematics and Newtonian stuff, you don't have to spend the whole 4 hours doing it. See a few questions, try them out. If you ace all of them, don't spend any more time studying on it, and skip and move forward and try the things that give you more difficulty. Allocate time to things that you have trouble with. Don't re-spend time on things that you already do really well, okay? If you want to flip that in reverse, though, and you're like, look, Nick, I'm working research jobs this summer. I plan on going to a wedding. I'm going to be gone for X, Y, and Z weeks. I can really only give you 14 hours per week. No worries. Start from the reverse, right? Put 14 hours in, figure out 300 hours, and then you're going to see you're going to need closer to 21 weeks, right? So maybe we are extending out to that 5 to 6 month range. You'll know as you start studying. And the beautiful thing about studying for this exam is it's stuff that you've already learned before. Sure, you're going to learn a few factoids here and there that you don't know, but with time, as you continue to practice and you continue to learn, and more importantly, you learn how you pick up material very quickly, maybe you realize, oh, if I watch videos for these topics, I'm doing really well. And if I just start with practice problems here, I'm going to do even better. And if I read the book for bio, that's the best way that I learn, right? Figure out the small nuances for how you learn different subjects, how you learn different things, how you practice different things. That's going to accelerate and shorten the amount of time you're spending studying. Okay. So quick sanity check. Can I get some emotes, some reacts, some kind of sign of life into the chat? I know I did a lot of talking. Any questions? Pop them in now. Love it. Thank you. Thank you for the reactions, team. Wonderful. Okay. So what are the big pitfalls to avoid then, right, team? Well, one, and by the way, if you want to check your test date, it's all here. You can change it too. But when we're looking through what the pitfalls are for you to avoid, it's one, don't overload your schedule in the summer. Okay. Trust me, as somebody who consistently does this, like, to give you an idea, I was a triple major and a minor in college, and I worked 6 full-time jobs at Berkeley while I was trying to take care of my significant other, right? We've been together for 10 years now. Your life only continues to get busier. So don't feel like you have to stick to and overload like 30, 40 hours a week into studying over the summer. Be realistic with yourself. If you need to spend a little bit of time throughout the school year too, and you do the bulk of your studying during the summer, life will get easier for when you start the school year. You don't have to study as hard, and maybe you're just into doing practice exams once every couple of weeks, and you've got that system down, you've learned all the content. So then you're prepped and ready to crush it in January, February, March, right? Oh, we got a great question coming in here. Is it better to retake the test a few times or reschedule and take practice tests until you're ready? So that's a great question. When you're saying retake tests, if you're talking about practice tests, right, that it's definitely just don't care about that first exam you take. That first practice test, nobody sees that score. Nobody cares about that score. Like my first practice exam, I scored a 480 something, okay? Made me feel absolutely devastated. Well, now scored a 99th percentile, did just fine. Right? But if you're talking about the actual exam, Your goal should be to try and take the exam once, okay? Because one, why do that to yourself, right? Why spend another Saturday or Friday or whatever day that you're taking it and make yourself drive out there and sit there for 8 hours and then drive back home? Why put yourself through that, right? If you can, try and do that one time, but don't feel like it's the end of the world. There's a lot of stuff out there online and through friends and stuff that are like, oh, you have to take it once. And if you take it more than once, it's going to look really bad on you. Team, I've been doing this, like helping students get into medical school for 10 years. I've taught over 13,000 students. Most of my students are retake MCATers, and I have sent them everywhere. I have seen retakers get into Harvard, get into Penn, get into schools that they could never dream of. I just last week got a student into medical school with the 493 MCAT, right? And she had taken the MCAT 4 times and was stuck around the 480 range for the longest time. And she got in with the 493. So at the end of the day, you got to just do what's best for you. Okay. Don't feel like if you don't do it right the way that the checklist happens for a lot of pre-meds, like you know that checklist, right? Research, then make sure that you take all your prereqs, make sure you get a GPA over a certain level, make sure you get an MCAT score of a certain amount. Like, yeah, you want to try and set yourself up so you can get all those things, but don't let that discourage you from actually taking on the challenge of becoming a doctor. Okay. If you don't fit the mold of a perfect quote unquote student, there are still other ways and approaches you can take to get there, right? Like every year, I get a lot of folks here at Kaplan who they wrote amazing stories and they just needed 4 more points on their MCAT to get into medical school. And they come to us and they're like, okay, well, my goal is between now and January, I'm going to take the first exam in January because they told me if I do well on this, I get 4 more points, they're going to let me in, right? Like just figure out what it is that you need help with and where your gaps are in studying and take it from there. Hopefully that answers your question, Kathleen. But yeah, bring that. Try not to clear your summer to only study for the MCAT. I hear that all the time. You don't want to burn out, especially for my juniors and sophomores and freshmen who are planning on applying straight. Don't create burnout early on. Okay. If you want to be able to provide the best patient care and set yourself up for success whenever you're in medical school, please, please, please find the time and set up the schedules to take breaks early. Know how you study the most efficiently, right? Spend time to actually rejuvenate and refresh and re-energize. Because team, like as part of my day job, a lot of it is going in and evaluating clinicians and providers and doctors, sitting in the back corner, watching how they take care of patients and then critiquing them. And a lot of the things I realize is it's because they're so burnt out already and they've been on this train for like 20, 30, 40 years and they couldn't find the time to stop and relax and see the sights and look out the window is something somebody said to me this morning, right? They didn't have that moment to do that. And that's why their patient care experience wasn't the best that it could possibly be. Okay, so don't feel like you have to clear your entire summer for that, right? Exactly. Touch some grass. Couldn't say it better. Love it. Now, from there, the last thing is don't compare yourself or your progress to others. Okay. Again, team, I have sent people places that I never would have imagined. 10 years ago, when I started trying to teach pre-meds and teach the MCAT, and I sat on the pre-medical stuff when I was at Berkeley. I was an advisor for a lot of students in the last 10 years alone. I used to think if you didn't do all these things, if you didn't have the perfect scores, if you didn't have all this stuff, you compared to everybody else, you weren't going to get in. And I have learned so much more from that, right? I spend a lot of my time volunteering and sharing, like helping people get in as underserved minorities into medical schools with under like scores that aren't the best of where they could be, right? They're not where they need to be. And it's because they felt like they shouldn't have applied and they kept retaking it and they kept studying and retaking, studying, retaking. And it's just because everybody else around them was telling them that's what they needed to do. Try not to do that. Okay. I know you will. Try not to. Take a step back and realize, write your own ticket, figure out your own path to get there. Okay. So with that being said, talking about how to practice and review. I spent I'm a super nerd team. So like I was a scientist for a long time. That was the first career that I took out of college, right? Was a cancer researcher, published a ton, and then realized I like education a lot more. And so I set up a lot of mini experiments at my time here at Kaplan. And one of them was like, well, what is going to dictate my student success? And I'm finally happy to tell you that after a couple thousand students, I've learned that amongst my own personal cohort of students, right, that 94% of them, if they reviewed their practice test and did an intense error log and went down and like wrote out their own explanations and taught themselves the questions so they can come back and review it in the future, they always scored a 10-point increase. Can I get a wow in the chat for that real quick? Like, wow, right? Like, think about how you studied for every test before. You don't sit there and go through line by line and write out answer explanations and try and teach yourself back. It's just so foreign. It's so different. But I promise you, if you try to do that early on and you set up a system that works really well for you, you're going to see a lot of results in a shorter period of time. Okay. So getting started, right? One, take your practice test, figure out how the MCAT's like, get used to sitting there for 7.5 hours, 8 hours when you include all the extra admin stuff on top of it, and then sit down and actually review every single section. And I mean review, get deep, dirty, gritty. Like, I want you to break down sentence by sentence, word for word. Team, the 4 words that my students miss the most, like, I would be rich already if I could just collect a quarter from every time somebody has told me they totally skip these words. It's based on the passage or according to the passage. They totally skip that. And suddenly they're like sitting there and going like, oh, well, I have to know this content and I'm trying to rack my brain and I don't remember what's going on. And they're just like, oh, what's going on? Right? The goal is to get yourself to realize what are the key words that point back to a piece or a hint in the passage to get me the rest of the way. Okay, so figure out both what you did right and what you did wrong. For the ones that you got right, make sure that you actually understood why you got it. Make sure that there's not a shortcut or an easier way to think about it, right? Write your own version of the explanation, because the way I tell my students, I teach students how to teach the exam, not take it, right? If you start by trying to learn how to teach the material, it really shows you how much do you actually know, and then tells you, where's my starting point? What are the content gaps that I need to fill in as I go? Okay. Now from there, generate action steps for yourself, right? Like, if you go through, you review a whole section, stop and take a breather and be like, okay, well, what's the things that I missed the most? Did I always misread the question stem? Did I always misread the passage? Do I have a content issue? Okay, what are the 3 big pieces of content that I should focus on right here, right now, that's going to help me answer exactly what's going on, right? But create some kind of action step for yourself so that you know that it's not just you reading the explanations. And team, I highly recommend you don't read the explanations first. Try and look it up, find the answer yourself, know what you need to Google, right? Without Googling the actual question, like, actually look it up, pull up the textbooks and see, hey, am I able to look up and understand this on my own? Because if you are, then you're building that muscle that is the hardest to learn for the MCAT. And that's critical thinking. Right? It's not about being able to give an answer. It's about knowing the steps to get you to the final answer. Okay. So when you repeat this process over and over again, you're going to know how topics are tested. You're going to constantly be reviewing the high yield stuff. And more importantly, you're not focusing on that one question that makes you stressed out. And you're like, oh, it's that fact that I just have to remember about like electrons, right? Don't do that to yourself if you don't have to. Cool. Now, I said review and come up with a great system for yourself. Here is an example of a system that we teach here at Kaplan that I've kind of built off of here. It's like, 1, put down what the question is. That's obvious. And it sounds like a lot of busy work up front, but I promise you it's worth it because you'll be able to find the question a lot easier. Write down the topic and then figure out the specific stuff. Like, why did you miss the question? The number of times my students miss the question because of those 4 words, according to the passage, is huge, because it makes them go into this cycle of I have to know all this material when they really didn't. And it was right there in the passage, right? So you can write this and set this up however you'd like, but the point is just be consistent with how you want to review things, okay? Focus on why you missed it. It could be like more detailed, like, oh, I didn't know X, Y, and Z content. And then you label it. What is it about it that you didn't really understand, right? Is it because it was a major concept? Is it because it was a strategy issue? Count up how many things you've missed are because of strategy versus concepts, right? If they're big concepts, that tells you right away, oh, I probably have a content issue. Let me go back to my books. Let me go back to the videos and learn what I need to learn. If you constantly see that it's a strategy issue, maybe that means you have a checklist that you do every time you get to a question, right? 1, I read the question and then I write a rephrase out, or I chunk the question stem up. Right? 2, I don't jump straight to the answer choices. I read and look for it. Does it say based on the passage? Or does it say a specific fact about, like, for example, Lafren? And you've never had to learn Lafren your entire life. Is Lafren defined in the passage? So you dive back to the passage. If it's not and it's on the question stem, cool. Then you dive into the question stems and you go from there. But create that checklist so that you can train your brain to do it automatically. Okay. And that leads us with the hi-fi part. This stands for how I fix it, right? This is your action step moment. If you're like, look, I don't understand images right here, right? Real versus virtual in physics and optics. Go back, figure out exactly what resource it is, and go to that specific video. That's your hi-fi step. And maybe you don't have time to do that right now, right here in the setting, but schedule. Take 5 seconds to go into your calendar and be like, okay, I looked at the module. It's going to take like 40 minutes. I'm going to set aside this 40 minutes on my calendar on this day to go and do it. Because team, if this relates to you, can I get a bunch of emotes in the chat? You're like getting ready to study and you go and you pull out your textbook and you pull up your computer. And the next thing you know, you're on TikTok. Or next thing you know, you're like flipping through the book and you forgot exactly what you're doing. You forgot the chapter and you're like, okay, well, whatever. It's like 37 minutes past the hour now. I'm going to wait until the top of the hour. So I'm going to wait another 20 more minutes before I start again. Yeah, I saw some reacts come in. I feel you, right? Don't fall into that trap, right? Because you feel like, oh no, I didn't do it right, or I got lost, or there are just tons of other things that got in the way. If you schedule it in the calendar and you know exactly where to go, you have a hyperlink that goes there, you have a page number to turn to, you're preventing yourself from falling into that trap of accidentally scrolling on TikTok, doom scrolling, or just fiddling around with a bunch of other things and going like, well, I wasted a bunch of time. I guess I want a fresh start and start again from the beginning. Okay. Avoid those feelings as much as you can by pre-planning exactly what you're going to do. Okay. So now how do you track your review, right? A lot of this comes down to, we talk about like a 2-error principle here at Kaplan, right? One is like, why did I choose the wrong answer, right? For a question like this, it's really nice because you see right away, if you're just skimming, this increase versus decrease, right? Well, did you get at least the increase part right? Awesome. So what is it about the other part that you don't know? Did you not know what interquartile range is? Do you not understand what sample is? Or did you not understand what the question stem was saying in the first place, right? And then more importantly, why did you knock out the wrong answers? So if you've ever been in a class with me live, right, whether it's one of the free events or if you join us in the future, you're going to hear me say this a lot in class. I'd rather you be confidently wrong rather than wishy-washy right. Why? Well, because if you're confidently saying this is the answer, but then you eliminated the right answer, you should be able to back up exactly why. And those are the moments you're going to remember a lot better. Okay. Like, anybody have that moment of like, oh, that one math test where you felt like you did a great job on it and you solved everything, you finished it early, you sent it into your teacher, and it comes back and you missed the question and you looked at it and you're like, oh, I answered what is X, but it was asking for Y. Anybody still have that visceral moment? Like, I have so many of these in my life that it's kind of embarrassing. Like, oh my gosh, if you have that moment where like, I know this and I was overconfident about it, but then you missed it, you still remember it somehow. That's what you want to try and create as much as possible as you're studying for the MCAT. Okay. So pay attention, figure out what you went through. Why did you get it wrong? Figure out what made you eliminate it, and then start to read the explanations. But don't immediately dive into the explanations because it takes away the thought process for it. It takes away your ability to think through what the issue is. Cool. All right, I'm going to pause there. Questions, thoughts, concerns? If not, can I get some emotes, some reacts, some emojis coming in to let me know that you're here and you're ready? Cool. So I was scared to do some science tonight, but I think y'all are ready. Let's do some science tonight, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up this first question here, and I need your help, team, okay? What is this question asking us to do? What is this question asking us to do? Nobody? Anybody? Find the functional group. I love it. Oh, but more importantly, functional groups in compound F. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, we're focused on compound F, and we want to know the functional groups. See, a lot of folks start at the beginning. Anybody do that, right? Read from the beginning and then look at all these structures and start going on autopilot and breaking them all down and thinking about what the synthesis reaction is. It's okay. You can be honest. When I first started studying for the MCAT, that was what I did because I felt like I had to know everything. I had to be an expert at everything. But no, just dive down and do less work on this exam. I focused in on compound F. Cool. I know it's asking for functional groups. I'm only going to look here. Team, we don't even have to look at the rest of this stuff. All of that, gone. And you'd be surprised how often the MCAT does that. Okay, so we're focusing only in on compound F. Team, what are some functional groups you can see off the bat? What are some functional groups you can see off the bat here? Ooh, I love it. Phenyl. Okay. Phenyl. What? Help me describe what is the phenyl? And throw away that question mark, Charmaine. I'd rather you be confidently wrong, not wishy-washy right. In this case, though, you are absolutely right. What else is going on? How do we know it's a phenyl? Yeah, the ring structure. Beautiful. Okay, ring structure. We know we got some kind of phenyl group. Cool. So that means bye-bye to A, bye-bye to B, bye-bye to C. And how many of you are like, what? So I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to look at an amide or an enamine or start to have that like crazy freak out moment. Anybody like thinking about that cartoon with the dog and you're like, oh my God, it's on fire. But everything's okay. And you're just sitting there and you're freaking out like amide, amine, what is that? Yeah. Strategy on this exam is huge. Because see, if you were able to figure out the easiest functional group, the one that you have learned consistently from day one in OChem or week one in OChem, you could just jump straight to the answer without doing a ton of work. Come on, team, you got to give me a wow, right? Maybe something, some celebrates, emotes coming in. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. The idea here, team, is take breaks as you're going through the question itself. Don't feel like you have to break down. And if you know, okay, I need to know all the functional groups. So you're sitting there and you're splicing this up and you're trying to label them all. It's great if you can. But on test day, this became a 30-second question or less because we didn't have to read all this extra stuff. We only had to focus on compound F. And you've pointed out the biggest thing that's blaring in your face early, phenyl, and you stopped and you went back to look at the question, the answer choices first, right? And there's only one with the phenyl. Beautiful. Done. Got our answer. You didn't have to read everything else. And that's what you want to learn to do as you're studying for the MCAT and what our course really tries to set up for you as you're going through and studying. Okay. All right. So that being said, let's talk through about the resources. And, you know, I know it's recorded and I know that ERM's here, but I'll be honest with you. Pre-2015, I hated the Kaplan MCAT course and I was learning and studying it. It was hard. It was tough, right? I mean, do you disagree? Like, it was just throwing video after video and then expecting you to find the questions. And it was just a pain, right? Maybe I'm a little biased because I was recruited onto the team to redesign the course like so many years later, right? But I was like, yeah, none of this stuff worked for me. So we threw it all out the window and we redesigned a lot of stuff. In fact, I was in charge of all the biochem videos. So I apologize in advance. You might see some really cringy stuff like, team, I teach you enzymes by talking about prom, right? And talking through the basic stuff that you've been through before. And I realized that the problem that everybody has had when studying for this exam is you just feel like you have to go through and watch a bunch of videos or read a bunch of books and learn a bunch of content up front. But it's not that. It's how good can you get at practicing questions? And that's why I'm really happy to say that now the exam, the course that we have is completely full of questions. Like I'm still writing questions now. Like that's to give you an idea and to find the questions before the questions were really abstract or obscure or talked about random things and weren't always related to the MCAT. Now, team, to write questions, I have to find a model from AAMC. I have to go through and figure out down to the word count, down to if all the answer choices end in a period, to see if the question stem ends in a colon. Do I capitalize again or not? Like we're trying to make it as close to what you're actually going to see on the MCAT as possible. They are now as test-like as can be. Okay. And they're spaced between the videos. You have mini quizzes here and there. Like we really tried to change everything up. All right. So like, to give you an idea, like, how do you know what you need to work on? Again, start with your practice tests, right? And then once you go through the practice tests, you go through that process of reviewing, you go over to the modules. You have a specific calendar set up now. You know exactly where to find those pieces of information, whether that's going to be a full-length exam or a module on a specific topic. And the best part about the course, team, is not only do you have all of the Kaplan full lengths, right? You also have all the official AMC stuff too. And I promise you, I'm a teacher, not a salesman, which is why ERM's here. Like I just love this part of the course so much. And I'm here to teach you how to have fun. Like my one dream in life that I guess I kind of did realize was I wanted to be a choreographer and a singer and a dancer when I was like way back. And look at me, right? Like my parents were not very happy about that. So instead, I show up at like 6, 7, 8 p.m. at night now on a camera, and I sing and I dance and I have fun and we learn physics and we scream, "Hey Barbie," to talk about psychology, right? Like that is literally what I do. And this is literally how we've set up the course to try and teach you in these fun and interactive ways. Okay. So what do you do to fill in the content gaps, team? Well, of course, the books, right? Gotta say that I'm not home right now, but like at my home in Houston, I have a bookshelf and I bought every single MCAT book from every single company out there, right? Berkeley Review, Princeton Review, Kaplan, Next Step, right? Exam Crackers. I have them all on my bookshelf. And I have read chunks and pieces from all of them. And I got to say, unfortunately, our books are the only ones that go into level of detail that I've seen actually show up for AMC questions. Like the other ones will give you ideas and content, but they're going to require you to remember that one day in that one class of that one thing that your professor said about potatoes. And suddenly like, oh yeah, that's how this is related back to like stems and cells and division, right? But our books go in real detail. So my younger students here, right, grab a set of MCAT books. It doesn't matter whose, right? But grab a set of MCAT books as you're studying for your school subjects, go through the MCAT book at the same time. You will save yourself so much time if you get through that early and now, right? And if you want to go through it at like an overkill level, like the Kaplan books do a really good job at that. Okay. Now I talked about the videos, right? Like team, for a solid like few months, I was flying in and out of New York to go into our professional filming studio and making a fool of myself in front of a camera and doing cringy things on camera. Like I think there's a video of me like dancing on camera for some of the stuff we did, right? It's super cringe. I'm very embarrassed about it now, and I'm glad that it's not public facing. But like we have redone all the videos to make it very clear and to walk you through. And these scripts, my gosh, team, I was sitting there trying to figure out how are we going to tell this story? What's something that you can relate to? What's something that you know? We reviewed every script by 2 or 3 people before we had somebody go up on camera and actually talk through what was happening. Okay. And we call these our content refresher videos, those modules, right? You go through, you watch the video, you get a brief taste of what you should know. And it should spark your memory on things that you've learned in school already, or maybe give you a taste of what you should be learning. And that's just the cursory level. To get down to the details, if you need to get that far, if you're like aiming for a 525, for example, that's when, okay, I'm going to use the videos and then I'm going to dive into the books, or then I'm going to dive into my notes from school, right? And that's where you fill in the rest of the gaps. But these videos are great to give you, well, like their name's called, a refresher, right? To remind you of what's going on. Cool. So on top of that, these refreshers have quizzes, like I said before, beginning and after, to really try and evaluate, well, what did you know coming into it? And it's okay if you completely bomb it. It matters after you watch the videos and do some studying and reviewing of the first set of quizzes. Like, how did you do on the last one, the post quiz? Okay. So focus on the content, then go through the questions and really pay attention to learning content from questions, not learning passively by reading books and stuff. Okay. Like it's better to go through and be like, hey, I tried this question. I have no idea what this is. Let's break it down. Let's define what this word is. Go look that up. Let's look at what the answer choices are saying. Let's rephrase those. Then look up the content you don't know. The act of doing it over time, it's like when you were younger and you were using equation sheets and you keep doing it over and over again until the point where you're like, oh, I don't need the equation sheet anymore because it's in my mind. I know exactly what's going on. Okay. Now from there, if you know the content, right, you're trying to figure out how to apply it, then you can dive even deeper. Okay. So we have a bunch of QBank stuff. We have topic practice sessions. We break the practice tests up into different sections. So you can really dive in deep into specific types if you wanted to. But then you have to plan how you're going to review things. How do you pay attention and try and memorize the stuff that you can't help that you have to memorize, right? And that's where we have the whole flashcard set too. And you can start going through this. I recommend you do this in combination with things like Anki and Miles Down, the things that you have been taught your entire life, right? Like if you're a pre-med, people always tell you, start there, right? Mix and match, get used to and see some of these cards, maybe approach this. How do you then apply this and add it to your new Anki deck with a specific question, right? Like don't feel like you have to be stuck all in one thing. Mix and match and only do the things that help you. So if flashcards aren't your jam, don't feel like you have to do it because everybody else is telling you, right? If videos aren't your jam and you're more of a book reading person, go in and read the books. Don't feel like you have to dive in and focus on a bunch of videos, okay? It's about this experimentation and figuring out what works best for you. And sometimes it might even be different ways for different topics, okay? Now, when you practice, of course, the gold standard is the AMC 100%, right? Like it comes with all the AMC material. I always tell students to start early. You're going to find a bunch of blogs out there on Reddit with people telling you, oh, save it for the last month or the last 6 weeks. And you know, like when I was studying for the MCAT, when it switched over to the 2015, yeah, maybe you save it for the last month because there were only 2 exams and a couple of things here and there. Now there are so many exams, so many question banks. There's a new CARS diagnostic tool, right? Like start early. The earlier you start, the better off you're going to be. So you're not freaking out at the last minute and going like, oh, I didn't have enough time to do it all. Like team, can I get some reacts in the chat if that's you with some of the practice stuff you do for school exams? Like I remember I was taking this like biophysical chemistry class in undergrad and I printed out, I spent a week looking and finding all the previous exams for the last 10 years. And I printed them all. They were stacked this large. I got through maybe this much of it. And it was, I'd always regret that. I go like, I did all this work. Why didn't I actually do all of it? Because I didn't allocate the time to do it. Don't make that something that you regret when you're studying for the MCAT, okay? So to talk through the different resources, right? You have 5 scored AMC exams. One of them comes free if you don't ever buy AMC at all. It's that free scored one, right? And then you have a sample unscored one. You can use this as a question bank. It's a different strategy. If you know that you're a really anxious test taker, I usually tell my students to wait until the end, save that, and then go back to it. And that's the last exam they take. So they're not stressed out about their score. They're focused more on how they did raw score wise. Other folks are like, no, I don't have test taking anxiety. I want to see what my score is going to be like. So they break up this whole exam into small question packs to work through, okay? From there, you have all of these other resources. The ones that we're flagging for you are all the new ones, the post-2015 that they built again from scratch. So that's the independent question bank. That's the section bank. That's the only thing that you're going to see from AMC that has psych-soc questions, right? That's the official guide questions. And there's also the new diagnostic tool. Unprioritize the rest of the stuff. All these other things were pre-2015 that they kind of rejiggered from the old MCAT. And they're like, okay, well, yeah, this is what we can still test, or it looks very similar to what we would test now. And they set them up. A lot of them can be very passage-based and very nitty-gritty in detail. And just keep that in mind. This is how like you use those resources if you're trying to break through the next score plateau. Like if you're trying to go from a 510 to the 515, 515 to 520, these resources really help you get to the rest of the way. Okay. All right. So thinking through just a quick recap, here are all the resources that you had at your disposal if you were a Kaplan student. And the idea is mix and match and figure out what's best, works best for you. But on top of that, really, like, it's not about the resources, it's about the teachers. Like the people I work with here at Kaplan, like team, like if you couldn't tell, Iram's absolutely amazing, right? Imagine the rest of our teaching team. Folks, like it only gets better. Like that's why I'm saying I don't think I'm one of the best teachers at all. I have sat in classes where I'm in awe of how I wish that this person was my professor in undergrad, because then I wouldn't bomb that one test that I viscerally remember that was so hard. Okay. So seriously, team, like the beautiful stuff. Thank you, Iram. The beautiful stuff comes from the learning environment, learning with teachers, learning with your peers, and being able to say, like, it's okay that I don't really know this material, but somebody's going to be able to help me get there. Okay. So I'm going to quickly put it all together for you so you kind of get a sense of what is going on here, right? One, like space out your practice test. You want to take around 8, right? And you know, if it's a 3-month thing, that's why before you start studying, you want to plan it out really early, right? Schedule your blocks ahead of time. Be very methodical. Pick out times that you know you're going to be free. And also, don't just schedule your studying moments. Schedule time with your family. Schedule time when you're going to go to that Pentatonics concert. Schedule time when you're going to go out to like that fancy restaurant and treat your boo, right? You got to pay attention and notice where all your time goes. And from there, like be very methodical about planning what happens in each study block, and then budget your time, right? If you miss out and can't study a lot up front, that's okay. And what I usually recommend to students is tier up slowly. Okay, start small, try and get like an hour to 2 hours down, then aim for 5 hours, then build to 10, then see if you can get to 20. But it's not about the number of hours you study, it's about how much you can learn in those moments, which is why we're saying take breaks. Okay, use Pomodoro, get up and stretch every 30 minutes, right? Like work yourself up to that moment, but don't just constantly be beating your head into the books, because it's not always going to translate to points if you're not taking the precautions and the steps to let it sink in, soak in. Okay. So when you choose your path, you take the baseline, right? Then you can go through and start with your practice Q banks. You can learn some of the strategies from different like courses and stuff. And then you can also learn the content from the workshops, the videos, the books. We have workshops running 6 days out of the week, trying to teach you specific content in a fun and fancy way. That's usually where I get up and start dancing and singing on camera and start screaming, "Hey, Barbie," out of nowhere, right? But then from there, you're constantly repeating, rinsing and repeating with practice exams and reviewing. Okay. And the best way to learn is not from getting a bunch of content in your head. It's from doing a bunch of questions and pointing out what is the exact thing that I'm missing at this exact moment so I can go the rest of the way. Okay. So a few other quick things. One, practice, right? I promise you, as somebody on the team, pre-2015, couldn't tell you that with confidence. Post-2015, yeah, we make sure that they're as realistic as possible, right? There's a ton of hours there. We have a ton of teachers around to help you out with things, and it's personalized, right? We have a calendar, we have a schedule, and we set it up so that you don't have to think as much about it, right? And you can work through the specific topics that you need and find them when you want to, okay? And of course, this is my friend Ari, really great instructor, great content developer. She trained me a long time back in the day. You want to meet people like her to teach you really crazy stuff like thermodynamics. Oh, she's one of my favorite teachers to learn thermodynamics from too. Like we're taught this everywhere, comprehensive courses, tutoring. Like we try and make sure that we're going to help you get into med school. Okay. Yes, part of it's through the MCAT and part of it is from the 515. How do we get you to the 15-point increase? Right. But the other part is helping you feel confident along the way. You don't want to walk out of every study session feeling like you got beat. You want to walk out feeling like you're energized and you can do it again in another 20 minutes. Okay. So we're about to launch this new premium MCAT course. It's spent a long time. Like team, I've been planning this, been part of the team planning this for like since last year, at the end of last year. We're talking about how we're going to change things up. So if you want to pay attention, this is the dates and times to where this is going to be, right? But yeah, after that, so sorry about here at the end, Irem, but I'll let you take the reins with our last slide.
Wow, thank you so much, Nick. I'm gonna let you take a break a little bit and we're gonna wrap up soon. So we want to connect with you, like I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. We want to make sure that we're gonna help you building your personalized study plan. We want to make sure that we're gonna go over the course options with you. You can ask any questions regarding MCAT, med school admission timeline, regarding taking a gap year, not taking a gap year, or anything that you would like to ask us. So this QR code will take you to a calendar, and you can just pick the best time that it's going to work best for you, and book some time with one of our MCAT experts. I'm going to put the link in the chat just in case you want to click and book the time with one of our MCAT experts. Like I said, since we are in collaboration with Career Center, you are going to get 15% off on eligible MCAT courses. But you have my email in the next slide, which Nick will show you. Okay, so I'm the main point of contact here at Kaplan for UCLA. We also have a student brand ambassador. Her name is Rose. If you want to email me with any questions, if you lose the information, or if you want to ask me anything about Kaplan, MCAT, med school admission officers, of course, I'm not an instructor, but I know all the places that I can direct you. But thank you so much for being here and joining us. I hope you enjoyed the presentation as much as I did. So we're going to open up the floor for any questions for Nick. You can put in the chat or just come off mute. Anything you would like to ask us. And thank you all.
And seriously, y'all can ask us anything.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Um, okay, so I already kind of have a little mini vacation planned, but I have planned to like study in the mornings and then like go out. It's only like 4 days. I don't know. Have any of you had any experience with students who try to take a little break or like go on a vacation that's already been planned out?
Oh my gosh, all the time. And that's one of the struggles, right? And I'm really glad that you brought that up. If you know that you're going to study in the morning, try and plan ahead of time what is the smallest lift you can do, right? Like if you know you're going to be tired from the night before because you're going on vacation, you got to have fun, right? If you're going to party all night, that's fine. Then in the morning, so that you don't feel crappy and go like, oh, I tried this, but I kept reading it 10,000 times. What's an easy thing you can do? Is it flashcards? Is it rewriting your amino acids, right? Like if you plan that earlier, you're going to be able to stay motivated and not feel like, oh, I just wasted time studying again. Or maybe you study something and you felt like you learned it, but then you didn't. Does that kind of help?
Yeah, I got you. Perfect. Thank you.
Of course. Great question.
Hi.
All right. We got another
Hello.
question. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Oh yes. So I was wondering, like, when when we plan out, like, what to say over summer, like, what topics is there, like, I guess, like, how what's the best way to do it? Are there like templates out there we could use, or do we just like look at the list and just and kind of like go through like what we think we need most? Like, what's like a good way to plan out a summer study?
Great question. Start with the practice test, right? So there are a lot of
Right.
templates out there, but honestly, like none of them have ever worked for me, right? Because they kind of just throw everything at you and make you feel like you have to learn everything. Start with the practice test, then look at the topics, and then go through in detail. So if you start with like an AMC practice test, for example, if you join the Kaplan course, the first exam you're going to take is AMC full length one. There's a tab that's called the content and skills breakdown tab. Use that to really break down and see, okay, this question shows up 8 times. These topics show up 12 times. These ones only 4. Rank the order like that first, and then also rank it in terms of what you feel like you can learn the most and start generating your schedule from there. Does that help? And you'll kind of
Yeah.
learn the beginning, like, oh, I should spend 4 hours for this topic, but in like electrons, for example, I only really spend 30 minutes. It's about trial and
Hmm.
error.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Great questions,
And
team.
also, yeah,
Yeah, go
also
ahead. Go ahead.
about the link about like consulting with a specialist for 30 minutes, like what will the appointment be like? Is it like an advisory thing, or is it more like talking about the program that you offer?
I would say both. They're gonna go over the course options with you. They're gonna ask your GPA, your dream school, when you're taking the MCAT or taking a gap year or not. So you can ask any questions about MCAT. Some kind of questions that you just ask Nick. But it's gonna be more like a general advice on taking the MCAT in our program as well.
All right, for sure. Sounds good. I'll look into it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. And I see there's a quick question in the chat. If I were to take summer courses and work 14 hours a week during the summer, is it better to stick to a 6-month plan over a 3-month plan? And I'm a junior planning to start studying this summer. Great question. So you're going to hate this, but it all comes back to take a practice exam, see where you're at score wise, and also take a moment now to like look at the dream schools. Where do you want to be? Do you want to stay at UCLA or do you want to go abroad? What's that list look like? And start looking at what the average scores are for all those schools. And that will help you figure out what's your target score. Once you've got that down, then see from your baseline to your target score and how much work you have to do. If it's not that much, cool. Maybe you only need 3 months. Maybe you only need 1 month and you can knock it out over the summer. But if you're actually really far away, then don't kill yourself trying to do it, especially you're aiming for a gap year. I love it. Proud gap year, non-trad here, right? Like you can space it out and slowly study because then you're going to really know the material and you're going to be set up for success. So you're not stressing out at the end. Great questions. Great questions. Any others?
Yeah, I had a quick question as well. I'm still trying to figure out the modality of what type of materials I'm going to be gathering for my study. I was looking at Kaplan and the course, and I also joined the live meeting today too to kind of get some more information, and I did get a lot of helpful information. Thank you so much for hosting this as well. But trying to gather a lot of the resources, it can be really daunting trying to figure out what to study, and not what to study, but what to use for studying, and trying to figure out all these different names and brands. So I guess I kind of like what you would recommend, the first starting place, where to start, and kind of figure it out. The first step would be with the full length, right? And then from then on would be content prep and everything else. I guess I'm trying to figure out what would be the most success rate if it's just for textbooks or going with something like a Kaplan course. I know every student's different in what they typically use, but I'm planning on doing about 3 months study. I'm going to be taking on September 5th. So I just want to kind of get your recommendation on what a lot of students have had the most success with in terms of, things like that.
That's a great question. So it's tough to say what most students have the best success with, but if we bin it into like more specific things, like if you know that you're the type of student that you need accountability, like you either need somebody to schedule with you every single week so that you're going to sit down and do MCAT and feel motivated, right? Then using tutoring is typically the best route. If you're like, I don't really feel comfortable bringing up questions with an individual person one-on-one, I've never done tutoring before, I don't really know how that works, right? But you've used to being in a classroom setting, and you know that if I don't go to this class every week, if I don't have a set thing on my calendar that forces me to think about and prep and do a little bit of homework to keep you motivated, you should definitely go with the class. But if you're like, no, I'm an independent self-studier all the way, like I've learned everything since high school by just watching YouTube videos like Crash Course and Khan Academy my entire life, and I've done great, and that's your jam, right? Then start first by trying out either like videos from Khan Academy and then building up like and seeing, hey, do I want just the live online demand one? So those are the pre-recorded stuff from Kaplan, or some other group's videos, and like, try different ones, go to different events, see how they present the information, figure out what resonates best for you, right? Don't feel like you have to stick to one company either with all of this, right? I know it's Kaplan, right? But like, if you find that, hey, this specific resource from this specific group teaches this really well for me, but the books from Kaplan are what is my jam all day, every day, you go there, right? And you mix and match for what works best for you after going through each like iteration. And think back too, you've already done a lot of this work when you were studying for school in high school and college, right? Like, were you that video person or were you a book person? Did you read from all the AP books, or did you focus a lot more on notes from that you took in class, right? And that should be where you start when you're trying to plan, what resource do I go with next? If you know that you've been used to videos your entire life, let's start with videos and let's see where it goes from there. Hopefully that helps answer your question.
Yeah, that helps a lot. And I was interested in enrolling in the Kaplan course. And now that you mentioned it that way, I am a little bit more hands-on and notes related to class, and that's kind of how I learn. And I guess like a follow-up question for that would be for you, if did the classes already start? Are these one-on-one courses, or are they just like full-on courses with other individuals and from that are also studying for the MCAT? I guess my concern is that I'm a little, if that's the case, to enroll in a course, I'm a little late to enroll or not, just because I want to get exactly 3 months in of studying in time because my actual date is September 5th. So I don't know if it's a little bit too late in the game. And also I'm still in the quarter here for UCLA. So my plan initially was to um try to finish a little bit, hopefully by the end of the quarter. But if not, I'm fine also starting like June 1st, just to get a little bit while I'm still here at school. But during the summertime, I'm completely available to study fully for MCAT, which is kind of why I allocate a lot of my summer up until the date. And then after that, I'm gonna plan on doing something, like a friend trip with friends or whatever. But would I be too late to join a course right now, or something maybe individual with a tutor, or what's the situation with that? If you would happen to know.
Yeah, Iram, you want to take this one?
Me and Nick were like, no, 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 no. So we generally have courses start, I would say every other day for the live online, especially. In person is a little bit like more scheduled, but if you want to do live online, we have courses start every other day. So June, July, you can just start anytime based on the schedule. So we have Monday, Wednesday, or just Thursday, or just Saturday, Sunday. So it depends on, we set up the schedule based on the test dates. And we have a lot of course options still available for August and September test takers. So what I'm suggesting is, what's your name?
Kais.
Kais?
Yes, Kais.
Perfect, guys. So what, if you can just click on the link that I put in the chat and book some time with one of our MCAT experts, they're going to go over the course options with you and the schedules with you. And then you can just tell them, hey, I'm taking the MCAT on September 5th. I'm thinking this course, I can start on X date because I have other plans to do. So let me just take a breathe, and I'm done with the quarter. So just tell them when you can start, and they're going to go over the schedule with you, and they can enroll you in a course. Doesn't have to be live online, or doesn't have to be in person. They're going to go over the course options with you, and they're going to find the best prep option for you, and based on your schedule and based on when you're going to take the MCAT. Did I miss anything, Nick?
The only other thing too is with tutoring, that can start anytime, any day. Like there are so many different teachers too. Like I'm really weird. I teach at the oddest hours because I have a bunch of other things going on. Like, yeah, if you just tell them exactly what you're looking for when you do that consultation call, they'll help you match you with somebody to get you rolling as soon as possible. Yeah,
at least you can have an idea what we offer, and you can just see the details, and you're gonna learn more about our courses and programs. Did we answer your question?
That's perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna hopefully schedule that right now and hopefully get some more help with that. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Yeah, of course. You have my email on the slide. If you have any questions or lose information, just let me know. Any other questions for Nick? So many great questions.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to all of you. I do a lot of these events, and like this has been the most poppin' event we've had, not just this year. I think even if you consider 2022 and 2023, you all have the best questions all around. Seriously, props to UCLA.
That's why I mentioned I love presenting to UCLA students. You are all brilliant and amazing students. You want to do a great job in the med school as well. So I really appreciate you and proud of each of you. So every time that I'm on campus, I'm just amazed.